Good morning, good morning, good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Who do we have? Oh, Steve Williamson is back with us. Morning, Steve. Chris Ford is here as well. Morning, my lucky boys. Another week, another dollar. Well, maybe slightly less than $1. Gary Muirhead is here as well somewhere. There he is. Morning, all. How was your weekend? I hope you got done all that you needed to get done. And if you had nothing to do, I hope you enjoyed it. Either way. The countdown is on. Let me think. It is the 26th of January. This time in a month will be my birthday. Tomorrow, next month, I'll be at the IDE seminar, and then the day after that, packing the bags off to Vegas. So it's all coming very, very quickly, which is awesome stuff. Dan Cullen says, "Good morning, guys." Dan, where are you today? Are you a Didcot? I think you said you were going to Didcot. Had lots to do, done nothing. Sometimes that helps. I have to admit, spent half of Saturday doing a bit of shopping. Got a nice new pair of trousers on. Well, jeans actually, but I got a nice pair of trousers. Not much else other than that. Didn't really achieve much at all, but I've written a morning monologue. I'm ready to go. Packing my bag for Didcot area, says Dan. It's a nice part of the world. It's just a shame that it's has the connotations that it now has, particularly in demolition circles. Obviously, we are now. What are we? Well, this time in a month's time, we'll be 3 days beyond the 10th anniversary of Didcot happening. So maybe tip your hat as you drive past, Dad. One of your many hats. Loads of stuff to get through today. A slightly odd morning monologue, but it inspired me and amused me, so I'll be doing that for you. So how about, without further ado, if I roll the intro and get the show on the road? Let's have a look. We need a bit of this. It is Monday, the 26th of January. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming, the authentic voice of the global demolition industry. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. In today's show, on rotation with JCB, next generation Komatsu excavators perform in the wild. You can now turn any excavator into a robot. You can. And we're continuing our voyage to Vegas. This time we're doing it in the company of the mighty Liebherr. Plus, in today's edition of the Morning Monologue, Be the Penguin. Be the Penguin. I have a way with a natty title, don't I? Yeah, Be the Penguin. Looking forward to bringing that to you. Ken Hatter is here as well. Funnily enough, our weather report suggested that we might wake up to a light dusting of snow today. We've woken up to basically no weather. It's a little bit chilly, but there's no rain, there's no snow, there's no wind. It's just, out there. But Ken looks like he's got all the weathers at once. And Dan saying he will indeed tip his hat as he drives past Didcot. Do you know, it's surprising the effect that whole thing has had. I mean, I've obviously been back to the power station or the site of the former power station a number of occasions since the tragic accident and since the whole thing was vanished, actually, demolished and taken away. But even now, if I'm driving on the motorway and I see a sign for Didcot, I kind of get I wouldn't go so far as to say a lump in my throat, but my heart sort of lurches like, oh, Didcot. So it's such a strange effect it's had. It really is. Should we crack on? Let's have a bit of Caterpillar, and then we'll have a bit of JCB, and we'll see where the show takes us after that. Gary, I'm glad you mentioned this. He's just said that Gary, as you know, is up in Scotland. He says the sun is splitting the trees here. Did anyone see on, well, I mean, I saw it on the internet, but I'm sure it was probably in the news as well, that parts of America, and I know Minnesota is one of them, although, Minnesota has got other things to worry about right now. But yeah, the Midwest is currently experiencing a very, very, very severe cold spell. How cold? Minus 35 in some places, which is no joke. But the bit that stood out for me, going back to what Gary was saying, apparently there is a phenomenon in the States called exploding trees. Yeah. I thought it was some kind of meme or a wind-up or an invention. Turns out it's not. Apparently, when it gets super cold, it gets super cold super quick. The sap in the trees freezes and contracts. And then when you get a bit of heat back through, it expands. And they actually give out. I saw one in Wisconsin. They actually give out exploding tree warnings. Yeah, as if America hasn't got enough on its plate at the moment. Even the wildlife, even the flora and fauna is now out to get it. And I'm going there in a month. Pray for me, would you? Right, JCB. Let's talk rotating telehandlers, shall we? Like this.
Our time to evolve and change is now. We're very, very focused on increasing both productivity and efficiency. We chose this site for the trial because it's got some unique challenges.
So a trial with a rotating forklift would have been very ideal. We've got a unique site where it's very compact. We're surrounded by residents. We've got very little storage.
Traditionally, the timber frame manufacturer, for example, will provide their own crane. The precast floor manufacturer will provide their own crane. There's a cost and an inefficiency associated with that because we're not sharing that plant. If we were able to have that plant managed by us on our site, then we could sequence the trades accordingly and we could make use of the one machine, which is better for everybody.
We needed a machine that could boom longer. We needed a machine that can slew and move materials around and feed in awkward areas.
I'm operating the JCB telehandler. Telehandler has been crucial in building these houses you see around you. I can put myself in one position, can rotate, pick up and go straight into the building with it. I can afford myself an exclusion zone. If I need to move, it's quite a straightforward and simple thing. It's been easy actually with the reach that it has and the capacity that it can lift.
The beauty with this machine is that it can convert in under a minute from a telehandler to a crane, and that it can do the speed of a crane's job, and you've still got the ability that it can do a forklift job.
We can see that the unit is going to increase speed, but frankly speed was a secondary concern for us in this trial. What we really wanted to maximise was our learning. We wanted to understand how to get the best out of the machine. It's clear its flexibility is untapped in our industry.
There's a lot of versatility using this machine. Even using the forklift operations is quite simple as well, and it's made easy for the driver because you can put your revs up and then when you press your foot on the pedal, there's no jerking movements, it's nice and smooth.
Having this vehicle makes things a lot easier, and the things that we can do are done in a safe manner.
If you was to look at a traditional method on a tight space, a forklift would have to be parked down the road while a mobile crane comes in for 3 to 4 weeks. You're paying for downtime, you can't use the machine efficiently. With this, where it can convert, using it to its best ability.
It's also allowed us to minimise the amount of plant traffic in and out of the area. That reduces the disruption, but it also reduces the mess and just the general inconvenience to the residents.
I can set the machine up in one particular place and operate it via the remote control.
For everything that I've got inside the cab on the monitor, I've got here on the screen on my remote control, laid out exactly the same way. My lifting capacity, what I have on the forks now, how far can I travel with this load that I've got now. All of these things, it tells me on the screen on my remote control.
This is about getting more out of the people we do have on site and ultimately making their job easier and more productive through the use of technology.
I was surprised that this hasn't been incorporated into the site before. It's not as restrictive as it previously was using a tower crane.
Pleasantly surprised by the response from our own supply chain. The manufacturer of precast floors, for example, has been extremely positive, very keen to use it on our next site, wants to collaborate again, both with us and JCB.
You can bring it in, you can use it, you can convert it and carry on using it again. It's fantastic.
JCB were a natural partner. The support offered to training our driver to make sure we got the best out of the machine on the trial itself. The technical support remotely has been really, really good.
I'll definitely be considering it going forward on all my projects. It's one that is always going to have to be on the top of my mind.
So a couple of things arising from that, and I'll get to the chat in a moment because you guys have got some things to say as well. First of all, the guy that was operating it, Caleb, has a voice for a podcast. Caleb, if ever you get to see this, start your own podcast. You've got the perfect voice for it. Second thing is, bear in mind what that company was talking about, kind of going off in a slightly different direction from their competitors. Hold that thought for our morning monologue today, because that's kind of what I'm talking about. Ken Hatcher says, nice looking JCB. Dan says, great addition would be a tilted cab. Yeah, absolutely. Although I guess if you've got the ability to operate by remote control, you could even put yourself in a cherry picker and go and view it from completely at the load end. But yeah, good point. The crane companies wouldn't be happy with that piece of equipment. No, they wouldn't. I don't think the plant hire companies would be very happy with it because you can do too many things with one machine. Ken, thank you for that. I wonder actually if I've got the details of exploding trees right. Maybe it's the fact that it is the sap that expands while it's freezing, and that's what causes the trees to explode. Takashi 2057 just joined us over on Instagram, along with a whole other bunch of people. I'm surprised they don't actually do that, says Dan. Wow, interesting. I was talking about exploding trees. And Gary also says, I did hear that Russia had snow with a depth of 12 feet. It's a real eye-opener when you actually get to, well, either travel or look at travel. When you see here, I've said this before, we had a dusting of snow. I don't even think we had a millimeter. But there were cars sliding all over the place, and my wife was terrified of going out of the house in the car and stuff like that. And you look at parts of Canada at the moment, minus 35 degrees, 6 foot of snow overnight. Overnight, yeah. Wow, 12 foot of snow. How would you find anything? And I don't know if this is an apocryphal thing, but I was told years ago about the fact that in parts of Russia, they actually have squads of people who patrol the streets after the snow has started to melt. Because apparently, as I say, I cannot prove this, but apparently a lot of people in Russia like a bit of a drink, go out, get drunk, collapse in the street, fall asleep, get snowed upon. As a result, they die. But nobody finds them for days, weeks, or possibly even months later. Yeah. So they have people going around, oh, what's that mound there? Oh, that'll be Ivan. Wondered where he'd gone. Yeah. Also saw something else over the weekend. And I probably shouldn't hear this because I haven't checked the facts on it. But I saw a thing on the internet over the weekend that claimed that gay men lose their gay voice when they come out of anesthetic, because according to the thing I was watching, it is kind of a deliberate affectation. And when you're coming out of anesthetic, you're not actually doing that. So yes, as I say, I don't know whether that's true. I'd like to try it. Not on me. I think I have a very butch voice, but I do wonder if there's any truth in that. Enda O'Doherty has just joined us over on Instagram, just in time for me to press this button.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, we're going out with the mighty Komatsu now to look at their latest generation excavators out in the wild. Enjoy.
I like the PC220. It's so precise in everything you do. The new object sensors are great. When you're out in the open and you have people around, and it tells you when there's a person walking up behind you. Combine that with the eagle eye view, down view on it, it really helps you know what's going on around you at all the time. The new PC220 cab is so roomy, you can make it adjustable to however you feel comfortable. The GPS and the repeatability is unbelievable. I literally can take the center tooth and stake my pipe, every joint of it, every box with it. I did it, I staked it, and I took my rover and went behind it, and it was right on the money. The power at low speed is really good. Like when you're doing precise digging and that kind of stuff, it's really good. I've run other machines where it's like a delay to the control. This one has that instant feedback to it. So you get the response the moment you start pulling the stick. When you're doing small motions, that quick and easy response, knowing that it's there every time, means a lot.
yeah, looking forward to seeing that up close and personal in Las Vegas in, well, a few days' time. Back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
So staying on subject, Dan says, I'm looking forward to getting a shot on one of those new Komatsus. Me too. Chris Ford says this. We're talking about the minus 35 and 6 foot of snow. Sounds a bit like the shovel I'm driving. The aircon blows cold and the heater isn't working. Feels like minus 30. So two things. I'm sure I've told you about my first car was a VW Beetle, and it had a heater that basically extracted heat from the exhaust and pumped it back into the car, but it only had two settings, on or off, and I broke the cable and it was permanently on. One thing, but the other one which springs to mind, my mate and his girlfriend, who happens to be my sister-in-law, they're no longer together, but that's a whole other story. They went off to America, 1989. They went in the summer, actually, summer of 1989, and they flew to Florida. And because they were going to be spending a year there, they actually went out and bought a Volkswagen Golf, and they were planning to tour pretty much all the states. I think they ended up doing like 36, 37 states. But they bought a car in Florida, and it was a used car, so it had obviously been spec'd for Florida weather. So it had maximum aircon. It had no heater. Which was fine all the time they were in Florida. But they drove across country, including going through places like Wyoming, where it was snowing. We met up with them in New Orleans, and it was minus 20, freak weather, brought the entire place to a standstill. And we basically, in order to keep the windows clear, because there was no heat to throw up the thing, had to drive along with the windows open. That was fun in minus 20. Yeah. Gavin Elson. Wow, Gavin Elson. Welcome back, my friend. Good to see you. Why have we suddenly popped back up on the top of the popularity charts? I don't know, because Steve's been slightly absent recently. I'm sure he's got much better things to do than fanny about with this show. And Gavin Elson's been far too busy training the next generation of operators. Morning, Gavin. Good to have you back in our midst, my friend. Thank you for joining us. We're talking robotics in a moment, but in a slightly different way. Back after that.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
In amongst all the chat that we have about autonomy and robotics and automation and that kind of thing, there's always this belief that it's an either-or situation. You go robotic and you no longer need an operator and so on. Not quite so clear cut. Have a look at this from Gravis Robotics. If the name rings a bell, you may remember when we were at Bauma last year. We featured an autonomous machine on the Hitachi stand, and it was powered by Gravis Robotics system. You can turn any excavator into a robot. Doesn't need to stay that way. Have a look at this. The timing of that film is absolutely perfect because this morning's morning monologue, I want to talk about the idea of not necessarily conforming, marching to the beat of your own drum. Imagine you've got a reasonable plant fleet, excavators, wheel loaders, dozers maybe, and to have one of those on standby whereby, if needs be, you can have that operated remotely. You can put it on an excavator if the job is particularly demanding or if the job is particularly hazardous. And then when you finish that job, take it off and put it on a dozer for maximum precision and so on. I'm looking forward to meeting up with the Gravis Robotics people in America. Looking forward to that enormously. It's going to get even easier with the electric servo valve blocks that they're fitting now. Yeah. Listen, we all know the writing is on the wall. And as much as I admire the skill of all our operators, if you want maximum accuracy, productivity, and safety, it's hard to argue with the robots. Really is. We've got one final film, which I've already said I'm looking forward to going to America, and I am because of this. Yeah, the voyage to Vegas continues, and it continues in the company of Liebherr.
And that's why I'm proud to be part of Liebherr. For many reasons, but I'll cover one. I was in Miami on a trip, and I looked at the skyline, and I saw a ton of Liebherr cranes. And I said, it feels good coming to work every day knowing that we're helping to literally build the world. So that brings me joy to know what we're contributing to is helping the Liebherr employees build things that help build our world.
I enjoy working here at Liebherr because I feel my time here does make a difference in the industry.
It's a large global company where I feel as part of something big and significant. I love the diversity of our business because we work in so many industries and it's never-ending learning process. And I definitely love the opportunity to work with people around the world.
It's a very family and employee-driven company along with customers. I've been here for 10 years. I've been here since the inception of concrete pumps and I really enjoy it. It's fun. And the people are great to work with, customers and colleagues.
Meet us at ConExpo 2026, Liebherr. Count me in, I'll certainly be there. We're going to say good morning to Mick Norton, who's just joined us as well. Ken Hatcher says, no robot can do my job, though. Well, it probably would struggle with the pizza eating part of things, I grant you that. But a matter of time, do you think? A matter of time. I would like to see more Liebherr on sites. So would I. I mean, there are some Liebherr strongholds out there in the industry. You've just got to know where to look, I would say. That's about it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue, which talks about penguins. Don't ask. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very, very soon. I'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. actually. But if you have the time and the inclination, please do stick around because I'll be back after this. If you've spent any time on YouTube over the past few years, you've probably seen a video entitled The Lone Penguin. The clip comes from a Werner Herzog documentary and it captures a curious phenomenon. There's a colony of penguins marching in unison towards the sea for food. But one lone penguin stops. He turns his back on the shoreline and begins to waddle towards the interior of the Antarctic continent, towards the mountains. Scientists call him deranged. They call him depressed. But what if he's actually a pioneer? For decades, the demolition and construction industry has behaved like that penguin colony. We follow the tracks of those who went before us, heading towards the same feeding grounds, using the same methods, and governed by a collective hive mind that rewards conformity over courage. Yet the most dangerous phrase in any language is, "We've always done it this way." In the demolition and construction sector, this sentiment acts like an anchor. Let me do that bit again. In the demolition and construction sector, this sentiment acts like an anchor. It breeds a culture where innovation and efficiency are sacrificed at the altar of tradition. When the industry turns right because that's where the momentum lies, the visionary turns left. Following the crowd is safe, but it's also where the competition is greatest, where the margins are thinnest, where the ideas are stale. The lone penguin doesn't care that his peers are staring at him in confusion. He's got a destination that they can't yet see. To lead in this sector, you've got to be prepared to be the oddity, forging a path through the snow while others crowd the shoreline. The industry whispers that electric excavators lack the grunt or that hydrogen is a pipe dream. The hive mind waits for proof, but the leader provides it. Embracing zero-emission machinery is not a box-ticking exercise for a tender. It's a declaration of independence from the volatility of fossil fuels and a commitment to the health of the communities that we help reshape. Technology shouldn't be viewed as a threat. It's a gateway to the next iteration of this industry. If yours is the only firm on site using real-time data to predict structural movement while others rely on gut feeling, you're not deranged, you're ahead. If you've got a workforce that is predominantly female, proclaim your femininity, wear it like a badge of honor and of differentiation. If sustainability is a passion rather than an obstacle, pin your colors to the environmental mast. Let the world know that you aim to protect it. Construction has long wrestled with a reputation for strategic grey areas, backroom deals, opaque billing, and an excessive use of brown envelopes. The hive mind says that's just the cost of doing business. It suggests that to survive, you have to play the game. Individualism demands a louder honesty. To be the lone penguin in a corrupt environment is to be radically and vocally transparent. It means being the firm that admits to a mistake before it's found, the contractor that bills with complete clarity, and the leader who refuses to participate in the nod and wink culture. That level of integrity is lonely at first. You'll be excluded from certain circles, but eventually the world will learn that the person walking toward the mountains is the only one that can actually be trusted to reach the summit. The penguin in the film doesn't look back. He doesn't check to see if his friends are following. He's governed by an internal compass that is far more powerful than the collective instinct of the group. In your business, that translates to a refusal to be governed by industry trends that don't serve your mission. If the sector is obsessed with rapid, low-quality growth, choose the slow, meticulous path of craftsmanship. If the industry is hesitant to invest in its people, be the one who builds a legacy of elite training and mental health support. When you stop caring about the approval of the colony, you gain a superpower. That superpower is clarity. You're no longer distracted by the noise of competition because you're no longer competing in their race. You're on a different track entirely. The critics will say you're heading towards certain failure. They'll say that the mountains of new technology, radical honesty, and nonconformity are too steep to climb. Let them. While the rest of the industry huddles together for warmth, repeating the same mistakes and breathing the same stale air, you'll be the one who sees the sunrise first. The demolition and construction industry doesn't need more followers. It doesn't need more team players who are afraid to rock the boat. It needs the deranged, the obsessed, and the single-minded. It needs the people who are willing to walk away from the shore. So do it. Follow your heart. Turn left. Be the penguin. I will go over to the chat in just a moment. But I was thinking about this. I don't consider myself to be an overly rebellious person. Sometimes I do like to go against the flow from time to time, but that's not really my way. I do it sometimes for comedic or artistic effect, but that's not really my way. But when I was younger, I used to thrive on minor rebellions. I went to a school where you had to wear a school uniform. And I would wear the school uniform, but there were always little tweaks. My school blazer was supposed to be black. Mine was a very dark navy blue, chosen deliberately. You know how you tie a tie? I realise most of you don't wear a tie that often, but you tie a tie with the thick part, the wide part at the front. I went through a phase of tying it the other way round with the thin part at the front and tucking the wide part into my shirt. So I had this tiny little, just as a minor rebellion. But we get that beaten out of us, don't we? Those little rebellions. And the one that still sticks in my mind, when I first became a journalist, I joined a news desk as a junior reporter. And within about 6 months, I was given a promotion. I don't think it was a reflection on my capabilities at the time. I think it was, there's another job, let's put him in there and we'll get another junior in because that'll be the cheaper option. I think it was purely as simple as that. But at the time, this is 1987, 1988, I had long hair. Well, long hair. It was the 80s. It was permissible. I got my promotion, and one of my senior colleagues said to me in passing, "Oh, now you've got the promotion and you're earning a bit more money. Maybe now you can afford to get your hair cut." Ha ha. Based purely on that comment, I didn't get my hair cut for another 2 years, and it was down here by the final time I finally got around to doing it. Yeah, when did we stop doing that? You will remember that we were speaking a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week ago, about the true nature of PPE. Bearing in mind that it doesn't prevent the main causes of death in this industry, asbestos-related diseases, suicide, falls from height, doesn't prevent any of those, but we insist upon it. Why do we insist upon it? It's a form of conformity. And I will go back just very quickly, and I will go over to the chat in just a moment. I was thinking about this from a demolition perspective, but think about this from a plant hire perspective is what I mean. You run a plant hire company, and 5 miles down the road, there's another plant hire company. 5 miles in the other direction, there's another plant hire company. Now, the temptation is to base your plant hire fleet on telescopic handlers, mini excavators, dumpers, maybe a backhoe loader or two, something like that. But if you're running, for example, mini excavators and you're charging £200 a day, I don't know the rates, £200 a day for a mini excavator. The guy down the road is charging 190. The guy that way is charging 170. You can't compete. Or you can, but your margins are reduced. In fact, you may be operating at a loss. But what if, rather than operating site dumpers, telescopic handlers, mini excavators, you specialised in piling equipment, you specialised in demolition attachments? The guy down the road down there, he doesn't run those, so you've got no local competition. The guy down that way doesn't run them either. No local competition. You can set your own standards, you can set your own rates, and nobody can touch you for it. Think of this show. There are magazines out there that claim to cover the demolition industry. Don't get me started, but they claim to cover the demolition industry. But they're all competing for the same advertising dollar. Oh, I've got a circulation of 1,000 people. I've got a circulation of 1,050 people. My rates are £500 a page. My rates are £510 a page. I'm over here doing my own thing. Do what you like over there. I don't care. I'm not. As I said in that piece, I'm not running the same race as you. In fact, I've built my own track and I'm just running laps on my own. You can keep that nonsense. I'm going to be over here. Let me go over to the chat. Just quickly. That idea of conformity. Don't we get a mixed message when we're young? You're told, follow the rules, you go to school, you wear the school uniform, you treat your teachers in a certain way, you treat each other in a certain way. You must not go off in your own direction. Is anyone ever told by one of their parents? My mum was a fan of this one. If your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do it? In my head, the answer was always, if I thought my friends would find it funny, I probably would. But the actual answer is, you must conform. You must conform, but don't do what your friends do. Weird, right? Let me go over to the chat. Let's see what's going on over there. Apparently, Dan says 1 in 10 penguins are gay. Maybe our lone penguin was going off in search of a musical or something. I don't know. Ken is on his way out the door. Did you know that? I did not know. I've never. I've got to be honest. I don't spend a huge amount of time studying the sexuality of penguins. Maybe I should. Maybe I can learn something from it. Mixes. Who read the Sunday Mail's article on HS2? I actually couldn't bring. I couldn't bring myself to touch a copy of anything with the word male in it, but let's go on. They quite rightly question the cost of currently £600 million a mile. And what exactly are the 35,000 workers doing? Welcome to the UK. I'm the same. If someone says something as a dig, I dig deeper and I push back harder. I'm not entirely sure it's... I don't think it can be a blanket thing. I don't think you can be entirely contrarian. If somebody says the sky is blue and you say it's not, it's orange, you end up being a bit of a tit. But I do wonder, when you think of all the activity that goes on in this industry. Now, for example, I think if you set your stall out in the demolition industry, specialising on the demolition of low-rise buildings, terraced houses, standalone houses, you would be competing with 600 other companies. If you set yourself up to do more specialised petrochemical, nuclear, tower blocks, bridges, all of a sudden, rather than competing with 600, you may be competing with 10, 15, 30. You think about the pre-site tender walks that people are doing now. There's an open tender for a job to demolish something, and you've got 30, 40, 50 people turning up to look at it. And you know exactly what the effect of that will be. The effect of that will be that will drive the cost down. I'll do it for 100,000. I'll do it for 95. I'll do it for 93. I'll do it for 90. I'll do it for 60. No, none of that makes any sense. Whereas if you can go in either, doing it in a different way, using different equipment, using different technology, doing it in a way that conforms with the contract or with the developer or the client's environmental desires and aspirations, doing it by employing a lot of local people when your rival isn't, thinking, everyone's going that way. Go that way. Dan Cullen says, talking about telehandler hire, I was chatting to a guy and they hire out a telehandler £200 a week. How does that pay? I don't believe it does. And I do think we've bought into. I said a couple of days ago that we've kind of convinced ourselves that data is knowledge, and it isn't. I mean, I can collect 1 billion pieces of information. That doesn't make me intelligent. It just means I've got a lot of information. Doesn't mean I've analysed. It doesn't mean I've identified trends and forecasts. It just means I've got a lot of data. And I wonder about that with the telescopic handler. I wonder if we've become so fixated, particularly in the plant hire industry, on utilization. If we're getting that machine out at 80, 85, 90% utilization, in other words, you own it, you've got 52 weeks in the year, and for 48 of those 52 weeks, it's out there earning its keep. There's a temptation, I believe, that says to you, oh, high utilization levels, that's absolutely fantastic. That's exactly what we need. But anyone can get utilization levels if you give it away. You know, if you're charging £200 a week, 10 grand a year for a machine that's cost you 100 grand, and you're going to chop it in after 3 years, it makes no sense. No gym today? No, and Dan says, and no, Jim started a new job today. He's yet to bring them around to our way of thinking that says that from between 10 and 11, we do fuck all and we just sit here and have a chat. Chris Ford says, I'm old enough to know that years ago, if you were gay, you were happy. I'm fairly sure that some of the people that are gay today are quite happy. I don't know. As I say, I've not studied the sexuality of penguins, but I'm sure some of them are perfectly happy. So long as they're left alone. Well, why do we get involved in all that? Like it matters. Yeah. But conformity. And I mean, I kind of hinted at it in that monologue. The notion of conformity within trade organizations. We have codes of conduct. We have guidances on doing this and on doing that. Which means that everybody that is a member of the same club as you are doing the exact same thing. So basically, as I said before, the only thing that really differentiates you from the other 599 demolition companies that are doing what you do, ultimately, is likely to be the price. Who wants to play in that game? Who wants to be in that sandpit fighting with 599 other demolition contractors for control of the sandpit when there's another sandpit over here and there's nobody playing in it? Go and play in that sandpit. I know I'm mixing my metaphors. I realise penguins aren't much on the sandpit. They're kind of diametrically opposed, but you get my idea, or you get my notion. You know, why run a race with 599 other people when you could be over there just running a race entirely on your own? And if you finish your race in 10 seconds or 20 seconds, doesn't make a blind bit of difference because you're running your own race. You're not being compared to others. You know, you're not having to meet their standards. You're just meeting your own. It doesn't, as £200 a week won't pay for parts, nor pay for transport. No. And it's plant hire is I mean, I find demolition oddly frustrating at times, but I do actually think that the plant hire industry is one of the most frustrating sectors within our industry. I don't think, in my experience, the plant hire industry is particularly good at forging new paths, for one thing. They tend to be led. They rely upon the pull from the market rather than pushing something new. You know, no plant hire is, as has been proven over the past few years, no plant hire is going to go all electric or all hydrogen unless their entire marketplace says we want to go all electric, at which point they might. You know, they will continue to do what they've always done: buy them cheap, stack them high, sell them quick. That's what they do. There's no desire to go and forge their own path. And yet, if they did, you know, when was the last time somebody ran a properly successful hire organization dedicated entirely to demolition? I know Muttley do a bit and a few others and stuff like that. But, you know, if you were to set up to be, you know, the go-to guys for the demolition industry, you know, you're not competing with Lynch, you're not competing with Flannery's or Sunbelt, you're just competing with yourself. You're over here doing your own thing. And whereas the Flannery's and the Lynches have to try and get to know 100,000 construction companies, if you're running a purely demolition hire fleet, you only need to know about 400 people. In fact, get yourself along to the Institute of Demolition Engineers event in Leeds at the end of February, a month and a day from now. You could meet probably half of them there and then. You haven't got to go and try and conquer the world. You just need that little core of people. Look after them well, make sure your fleet matches their requirements, but you could make yourself a huge amount of money and a huge amount of success just by focus rather than trying to go with the flow. And ultimately, when you think about plant hire, if you're a little plant hire, a little, Dan Cullen plant hire from Watford, you've got yourself, I don't know, half a dozen mini excavators, a couple of telehandlers. Your buying power when you go to see JCB or Komatsu or whoever, your buying power is relatively small. I'm sure you'll negotiate a discount, but it won't be a huge discount. And I wouldn't say you're necessarily at front of the queue when it comes to parts pricing or getting a fitter out to look after one of your machines. If, however, you're a Lynch or a Flannery or a Sunbelt, your buying power means that you've already secured yourself an absolutely massive discount. You've got a discount on parts, your priority when it comes to getting your a fitter out on site. How could you possibly, Dan Cullen, I'm looking at you with your new plant hire company that we've not told anyone about, how could you possibly hope to compete against Flannery or Lynch? So why try? Why try? Go and do the things that Flannery's and Lynch's are too big. In many ways, Lynch and Flannery and Sunbelt, and I have enormous admiration for all of them, let me be very clear, but they kind of replicate the same model as the manufacturers. They're very, very good at doing lots of the same. JCB is phenomenally good at producing tens of thousands of excavators, mini excavators, telehandlers, backhoe loaders every single year. And in an ideal world, apart from one or two tweaks and maybe the odd stray paint job, what they actually do is they pump out lots and lots and lots of identical items. And the plant hirers are exactly the same. If you want a telescopic handler, go to Lynch, go to Flannery, go to Sunbelt, they'll hook you up. If you want a demolition attachment or an excavator mounted piling rig, they might struggle. Not the sort of thing they keep in stock because they don't have the volume for it. So if you're the person that does have that in stock, guess what? By strategy and thinking outside the box, you are now one step ahead of the multi-million Sunbelt, Flannery, Lynch. So why go after the same? Why try to fish from the same shoal when there's another shoal over there that nobody's looking at? No one. It's unbelievable the depth some people go to get machines out. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's the same as it ever was. I remember reporting on plant hire companies back into the 80s and literally going into print saying, I cannot figure out how these companies are making money. They're buying a machine for that. They're hiring it for that. The two do not match. There is no way you can make it work on that basis. Now, I understand the way that plant hire works. Maybe you're not making top whack on the telescopic handler. Maybe you're making dollar on the attachment that goes with it, or the backup, or whatever it might be. But by and large, back in the 80s, I was stating about plant hire companies back then. I cannot figure out how you are still in business because your maths don't add up. And here we are, 40 years later, almost 40 years later, and I'm still looking at it going, that makes no bleeding sense. And when you think about it, when you think about inflation and the cost of energy and everything else, how much is a mini excavator now? A ton and a half mini excavator. I honestly don't know, but the chances are it's 50%, 60%, 70% more than it was maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and yet the hire rate more or less the same. That makes no sense. The thing is that many demo companies are bad payers for hire, as I know a firm used to, but stopped hiring to them. A bit of a sweeping generalization, and ultimately, you've got. Funnily enough, it's funny you should say that, Dan, because if you think about it, you've probably got greater leverage if you are hiring demolition equipment than you have if you're hiring day-to-day plant hire. So think of this: you hire somebody, a telehandler. They are slow to pay or they don't pay. So you basically you take the machine back and you vow never to deal with them again. They're not bothered because there's another 50, 60, 100 companies from which they can hire a telescopic handler. If you are in the hire business and you have, let's for argument's sake, say a particularly large shear or a large pulverizer, and there's only 2 or 3 of them in the country, if that company doesn't pay you for the hire of that, yes, you have lost it, but you've got it back, you've lost that money, you never deal with them again. They're fucked. They're fucked. They've got nowhere else to get that from. You have more leverage, which goes again, back to this notion of when you're not running the same race, you're running your own race. You set the rules, basically. They were chasing money and stopped hiring to demo firms. Sad to say. Well, I'd go and push and force my knowledge. I'd be on site meeting workforce. Many of these companies that only talk over phone and email. They have no personal touch. Again, and I do need to reiterate this because this is genuine. I'm not saying this to avoid them phoning me up and swearing at me. I think that what Lynch and Flannery and Sunbelt and all of the others have done, True 7 the same, I think what they've done, what they've established, what they've created is phenomenal. I think it's incredible. I have nothing but respect for them. But if you're hiring 500 excavators, 1,000 excavators, 2,000 excavators, how in God's name can you hope to have any form of personal touch? Whereas if you are hiring a dozen machines to within a 30-mile radius, chances are the manager director knows by first name, by sight, most of their customers. They'll go and meet them, shake their hand. They'll know their wife's name, the football team they support, where they went on holiday. You can't replicate that at scale. You genuinely can't. I don't care what people say about these customer relationship management systems. Yes, you've got a spreadsheet that says, when you speak to Bill, make sure you mention Aston Villa or whatever. That's not the same as knowing people. It really isn't. 40 years later, and the price of kit's gone tenfold, and some people still put out at lower rates. Yeah, that's exactly the case. I genuinely wish I'd had the foresight to write down the plant hire rates from the late 80s, early 90s and compare them to today. And then when you factor in the cost of the equipment, the cost of finance, the cost of insurance, the cost of labor, the cost of parts, the cost of fuel, as Dan has rightly said, it's maybe 10 times what it was when I first started writing about this stuff, and yet we're still charging pretty much the same rates. There are things, I've said this before on the show, there are certain things, and I don't know why there are exceptions. When I was a kid, I desperately wanted a bike. I already had a bike, but I wanted a specific racing bike. And it was called a Rally Pacer. It was kind of turquoise colour. It's quite sleek looking, with the cow horn. Are they cow horns? The racing handlebars, and had a 5 gears or 10 gears or whatever it might be. Quite fancy. And I wanted it. And I went to my parents saying I'd really like this bike, but I knew it was expensive because it was, I think it was like 110 quid. There's a bicycle shop about half a mile from where I live. I could go in there today and buy a bicycle for 110 quid. It wouldn't be quite as leery, it wouldn't be quite as fancy, but in nigh on 40 years, the price of a bicycle has barely moved. Weird, right? Hyperion Demolition. Where on earth are Hyperion Demolition? Well, I can tell you, they're on Instagram. They've just arrived. Hyperion Demolition, good morning to you. Whereabouts in the world are you watching from? I'd love to hear from you. That's a good point too, says Dan. Chris says, in 1984, we used to... £7 an hour for a JCB 3CX, give or take 50p an hour. £7 an hour. Quick maths. So maybe 70 quid a day. 70 quid a day, and that is 350 a week. What is it now? And apparently Hyperion Demolition are on the west coast. I'm assuming that's the west coast of the United States. I'm assuming it is, because we don't really refer to the UK as the west coast. Our west coast is kind of Wales. So I'm guessing you're in America, but good morning to you, or evening, or afternoon, or one of those. You could still have the touch, as most are hired in one job and have to meet up. I just don't think you could. You know, if you're I mean, I've always said this about demolition companies, and I'm going slightly off beam here, but I will go through it. If you're a demolition company and you are running gang of about 20 guys, and you're operating 3, 4, maybe half a dozen demolition sites at any given time, and you're working fairly local, there's every possibility that your managing director, who is probably the founder as well, will be able to get in his car on a Monday and visit every single site. Now, visiting every single site, I think, maintains the standard that your crew are working to. It makes sure that you can keep an eye on your machines, and are they being cared for correctly? Is everything in order? Is the paperwork up to date, and all of that kind of thing? In addition to which, if you are that type of managing director, the chances are you can meet with pretty much all of your clients on a weekly basis. They've got your phone number, but you will meet up with them, make sure they're happy, make sure they're content, that you're doing everything they ask of you. The moment that you expand your demolition company to 10 jobs concurrently, and maybe rather than working in a 30-mile radius, you're working in a 50 or a 60-mile radius, you immediately lose that personal touch. You won't be able to visit all those sites and all those customers on a weekly basis. You'd be lucky to do it on a monthly basis. And the thing that built your business, that personal touch, that personal relationship, the fact that you were available 24/7 and everything else, has now gone. You've lost it. It was the foundation upon which you built your business, and because you've been so keen to expand, you've lost it. Your USP is no longer your USP. Sorry, something just come in while I was doing that. No, nothing to do with anything. I do apologise. Got slightly sidetracked there. I misread it basically. So yes, there you are. Be the penguin. Be the penguin. And if you haven't seen the penguin, go and have a look. It is quite fascinating. The bit that I didn't mention in the spiel there is that the penguin that went off and marched off towards the mountains was marching almost to almost certain death, because the food was that way and he was going the other way. But I do like that idea of the crowd's doing that. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I have to say I have enormous admiration for that. I bet the rate is not a lot different for a 3CX now in comparison with inflation, as unfortunately they're not as popular on sites, no. But again, when you think that through, there was a time, when I first started, every plant hirer worth his salt had backhoe loaders in their fleet. I realise that's no longer the case, but every plant hire company worth its salt now has mini excavators and telescopic handlers. If everyone's got them, what's your differentiator? Particularly, I would say, with a mini excavator. I think with a bigger excavator, you can sell it on the basis of it's got GPS up the wazoo and it's got Bluetooth this, and it's got all the fancy schmancies. When you're talking about mini excavators, by and large, you're looking at something as cheap as you can get it. So somebody that is running a Chinese import, as opposed to somebody that's running a really top-notch machine, they're competing for the same hire. Well, who's going to win in that likelihood? In all likelihood, it'll be the cheap one. Your only differentiator at that point is price. And if they've bought their machine at 30, 40, 50% less than you are, they're cheaper. Shocker. Dan says, yeah, the more expanded you do is your downfall. Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. I understand the temptation. I do understand the temptation of, you know, we're turning over £1 million this year, but if we did this and we did that, we could turn over 2 million next year, and we could do 5 million the year after that. And maybe you could. But the qualities that gave you the £1 million turnover, that personal touch, that interaction with your customers, you're now no longer able to deliver. I don't know what the higher rate is for a 3CX now, but I bet it's better than as there's less about. Yeah, maybe. Build up too fast, expect to fall hard. Build up your companies. Yeah, absolutely right. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, and all of that. Anyway, people, I've kept you away from work for more than an hour now, and for that I apologise. I will be back tomorrow with yet more of the same. Until then, everybody, please look after yourself, your family, friends, and your colleagues as well. And I will leave you with one final thought. Be the penguin.